Hey guys, Ryden here, and today I'm gonna be just giving my flat-out random thoughts as they come to my head, opinion on Genshin Impact, which is something a lot of you guys have been asking me about, because obviously from the look of this game and how it plays, a lot of you guys with Xeno would love this game, because I've been hearing you guys talk about this towards me, like, hey Xeno, have you played Genshin yet? Have you played Genshin? And even among my friends, it just blew up. So first of all, you're probably wondering, what exactly is Genshin Impact? Genshin Impact is what I'd like to describe as a adventure character action JRPG game. Produced by, I think it's MiHoYo Games. They're actually the same company that made the game Honkai Impact, which is essentially the mobile Bayonetta clone, and I say that in the best meaning way possible. Like, out of all the mobile games I've ever played, that one is a whole ton of fun. It is obviously based off of Bayonetta's mechanics, even coming down to having witch time and perfect dodges, but I think that's awesome. That game plays great, and here comes along, just the other day, Genshin Impact. Now, I had a lot of people asking me to do, like, a quick look on this, or like, Xeno, do an LP of this game, but the more I played the game, the more I realized I don't really think this is the type of game that deserves an entire LP on. It has a story mode, sure, but I don't exactly... A lot of you guys were asking me, like, hey, you gotta check this game out, it's awesome! Play it on the channel, and the more I played it, the more I realized it's not really suited to an LP. There's a lot of downtime, but I've enjoyed the game so much, I really felt like I had to talk about it. And I'm not exactly like a professional game reviewer or anything like that. This video is mostly going to be out of order rambling as I normally do, with out of context, like, gameplay in the background, because I lost 8 hours of footage, so here's an hour and a half of me doing random things pretty late into the game. But yeah, I thought I'd just create this little video and basically just give my thoughts on it. So I always like to split these videos up into like story and gameplay and stuff. So let's just talk about the story, presentation, and introduction to the game in general. The story just starts off with you picking one of these two blonde-haired twins, which I believe they call them the Animo twins, or the Travelers, or there's a bunch of different names for them. Either way, you pick one. The other one is immediately frozen and thrown away somewhere, who knows where. And then you basically get isekai'd to Fantasy Breath of the Wild land, and there's this tiny little creature called Paimon that I thought was going to be annoying as hell, but she actually kind of grew on me. And you go on adventures together. Yup, that's the introduction to the game, and if you think I'm kidding, go play the intro for yourself. The game does eventually explain some of these things to you and where you're going with it, but I can't really say a lot of that without going into spoiler territory. Not that any of the twists or turns in the game so far have really left me on the edge of my seat. You know, like I couldn't see that coming. Whoa, no. So far for me, the game's story it's serviceable. It's not bad or anything by any means. But it's not one of those things where I'm constantly on the edge of my seat. There's a ton of characters going on. You know, it's not one of those things where I'm particularly interested in the world building either. It's a serviceable setting for the game they wanted to make. I will say that. And the story itself is interesting due to the characters that are in it, more than the way the plot is driving itself. The story has a lot to do with, you know, your basic... There are dragons! What is the deal with the dragons? And gods and whatnot. But the characters you meet along the way actually make the story a lot more pleasant. Now, not all the characters are, you know, A+. Some of them I feel come off as excellent characters. Like, I love Venti. Venti in the story is this wonderful, cheerful bard who is extremely lazy, and once you learn a bit more about him, you really see what type of character he is and the responsibilities he has, and that he's likely shrieked to just come and do the things that he wants to do and protect the people that he cares about. He's genuinely a fun character to be around, I find, because he doesn't always adhere to the rules either. Like, there's even one point where you break into a place because Venti's like, hey, this is a great idea. This is what we should do. And legit, I've enjoyed my time with him. There's characters who you learn a lot less about. Like Kaya, I believe his name is. Kaya, I don't remember how his name is said. He's a dude with an eye patch. He's a knight. Apparently his eye patch was inherited, which I couldn't help but laugh at. The joke was hilarious. You have your knight lady. I've been calling her Jean, like Jean d'Arc, but everyone's calling her Jean, so I guess that's what I'll call her. You have your big booby librarian character who apparently half the fan base and half the Redditors want to step on them, Lisa. She's actually pretty cool once you go on her quests. A lot of her quests made me laugh quite a bit. And the thing is, a lot of the characters aren't explored in the main story. They'll appear and they'll do things that come with their character, but you won't exactly learn a lot about them. Luckily, a lot of the major characters actually have side stories that appear like they're going to continue going on as the game gets more updates. Like, I went through a side story with Lisa, the librarian, who we went to go return all these books, and it was actually quite the laugh. The way she deals with people who have borrowed books and haven't brought them back is reasonable, yet sometimes hilarious, and you get to pick out gifts for her. It was a fun side quest. Kaya has a treasure hunting side quest, which is a lot of fun, honestly, and it comes with a fun little twist at the end that I can honestly say I wasn't expecting. One of the things the game really needs to do better for its story, though, is some characters get a lot more attention than the others, and you can really tell. Venti, for example. I love Venti, and a lot of people do, but the reason Venti is so loved, well, aside from the fact that he's just some weird magic fairy Peter Pan femboy bard, but the other reason Venti is so loved is that he gets a huge part in the story. A good part of the first story actually centers around Venti and his past and what he's doing here and what his life, basically his life motto is and why he came up with that motto and why he lives by such a creed, you know? He has such a good arc, and that's why everyone loves that character and loves whenever he gets time on screen. But there are other characters, on the other hand, like my current least favorite in the game. Sorry if you like him. You know, I'm sure he'll get better as the story goes on, or if maybe I got him. But Diluc, oh my god, he comes off like a Fire Emblem Fates character. Almost every single cutscene I've seen him in that he actually does something in is him walking in, doing something, and then going, I hate the knights. This is why I hate the knights. They never take action. I hate them. And then he walks off the screen. That is about 80% of his action in any side story, in any of the main stories. He just constantly won't shut up, and he doesn't say why. And I'm sure it's a deep part of his backstory, but it just becomes so annoying when you're trying to invest yourself in this person and they just walk on the screen and then they say their catchphrase and then walk off. I don't know. He's also the top tier character though, so if you get him, you're pretty set for Fire Element. But all around, I'd say the story is serviceable, the characters are fun, and they give you a lot of chances to explore those characters. Some get more attention than others, but I feel like the side stories will help fix that in the future. Now for the most important part of the game, the gameplay. What exactly do you do? This is a very broad question. So this game doesn't like to give you a lot of direction, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Well, partially in a bad way, but mostly in a good way. After you finish the initial prologue, the game just goes, go do whatever. You can go do the main story, but that's not even necessary most of the time, as you're going to be exploring this massive landscape. And when I say massive, I mean the game is absolutely huge. Especially since the fact that you don't hit loading screens unless you're fast traveling. You can just walk from one side of the map to the other, which I find really nice and pretty impressive, honestly, especially on a phone, if you were to play it on a phone instead of PC. I played this game on PC, personally. It looks great, honestly. It looks like they really put a lot of work into it. But for the gameplay, you're going to be walking around, exploring the world, finding ruins, solving puzzles. Basically, this is kind of one of those games, if you're the type of person that liked Breath of the Wild and how it rewarded you for doing literally anything, you go see something shiny over there and then it gives you something, this game nails that. This game absolutely nails a feeling of accomplishment for doing anything. One of the things I very much dislike about games, like specifically Bethesda games, is sometimes they'll set up these gigantic landmarks and you'll walk up to them and be like, yo, what's this? And then they give you a bit of lore about it and that's it. There's nothing there. Genshin does not do this. Anywhere you go that looks like it is important, there is probably something important there. And when I say important, I mean loot. Literally every enemy you fight, every puzzle you solve, every location you visit, everything you read, usually results in you getting a shiny treasure chest and a lot of XP. And because the XP system is balanced so well, you can do just about anything and level up, and it feels great. Nothing really overtakes anything else as far as XP goes. Bosses, of course, give more XP, but those are limited for day. We'll talk about that later. Now let's talk about my favorite part of the game, which is the combat itself. As you all know, I adore stylish combat, and whenever something looks cool and feels good, I instantly fall in the love. I instantly fall in the lava? Fall in the lava. I fall in love with the game. Games like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry I love so much because they're so satisfying and stylish to play, and there's a reason why Platinum Games is one of my favorite developers ever, is because I love stylish combat systems that not only feel good, but look good and work well. And that's what Genshin Impact does extraordinarily well, especially for how simple its combat system is. Every character in Genshin has basically what is a string of auto attacks. They're all animated pretty uniquely. They have a special ability, and then they have what I'm going to call an ultimate ability. I don't actually know the actual names for the individual things, but all these abilities actually have different effects. Some of them are just straight up damage pumps, some of them are healing, some of them are buffs or debuffs. They all feel very individually unique. All the characters so far feel like they have their own individual uses, even if some are stronger than others, but that's just how video games go when you have so many characters. I believe there's around 20 characters at launch right now. They're planning on adding more soon. But right now we only have like a good 20 or so. I don't even know if that's the exact number, but it's around there. And each one of them feels very unique. And when I use them, they all feel like they have some sort of purpose or another. On top of this, whatever element your character is actually has a status effect that comes with it. For example, my water mage, Mona, actually makes things wet when she casts spells on them. And that can basically cause some sort of elemental effect once you hit it with any other element. If something is wet and you hit it with fire, it causes it to evaporate, doing a ton of burst damage. If you hit something that's wet with electricity, it does a DOT that does electricity damage over time. If something is wet and you hit it with an ice spell, it will actually cause it to freeze. Every single element in the game interacts with another element in this way. The only two special ones being wind and earth. Wind actually takes on the property of any other element that is on something. The main character, for example, can actually use tornadoes, and if you cast the tornado spell while something is on fire, it will turn into a fire tornado. It's a pretty cool effect. I personally haven't used the main character that much, but he is in my party and he does some pretty cool stuff. Earth, on the other hand, is currently one of the rarest elements in the game, as there are only 2 Earth characters, if I recall. And one of them you get guaranteed for free, and she looks awesome. But Earth is basically a defensive element. If you hit someone with a certain element and then hit them with an Earth element, it will cause something called crystallize, which, to my knowledge of how this works, makes them drop these crystals that allow you to pick them up and get a shield for yourself. I haven't used it a whole ton because my team's really offensive, but I've heard some people have some pretty good results with it. Also, there's some Earth Elements enemies that you need an Earth Element person to really be able to take down efficiently. And also, the most important part about all this, and part of where we come to some of my complaints in the gameplay, is that all of these elements can be used to solve these puzzles that are all over the world. Everywhere isn't just a combat encounter, there are puzzles everywhere too. Everywhere you're standing, there's tons of things to do around you, and sometimes it's even overwhelming because it's like, which way do I go? Everything looks so cool. But some of these puzzles actually can only be solved by certain elements of characters. Like, for example, there are torches on some hills, and sometimes you need to light them with fire, or sometimes there's things you need to freeze. And this is actually where one of my bigger complaints about the game comes in. And this is a personal complaint those of you who've watched the channel for a while will actually recognize, and that's I don't like how much you have to switch out your party and how much of a hassle it is. And I know people are like, oh, Xeno, you're just being a lazy asshole and complaining about nothing, as people always say. Like, legit, go back to my Golden Sun LP. It is literally just people screaming at me because I hate the Ginny switching system. But hear me out. So let's just say, for example, you see a puzzle that you have to solve, and you spend a good 20 seconds to figure out what's going on here, and you go, okay, it's an earth puzzle. I need an earth element person for this. So you open your menu, you go to the party select screen, and whoops, you moved your analog stick a little bit and it canceled. What do you mean it canceled? Well, for some reason, when you go to switch party members, there is a loading bar to get into that menu at the top of your screen. And if you move, it cancels the loading bar. So, okay, you messed that up. Let's go back in again. You click the button, this time you don't move, and voila, you're in this menu with all the characters. There's actually predetermined like party setups you can have. So you can have like, I think it's 4 or 5 custom setups of 4 people. So let's say you just switch over to the other person and you go, okay, I have my earth element person, let's switch. You switch to that person, you leave the menu, then you go to solve the puzzle. You walk over to the first part of the 4 earth puzzles, which are just these 4 like columns you have to hit in a row. And you can only hit it with your earth damage, so okay, you use your skill. But here's the other problem. There is currently only 1 guaranteed earth character in the game, and their skill has a 25-second cooldown. And you need to hit 4 of these things. What does that mean? That means you have to stand around for 100 seconds lighting these individual light posts. Okay, eventually, after 100 seconds of waiting around, you lit them all. So now you have to go back into the menu, wait for the loading bar, switch your teams around, exit the menu, and congratulations, you have your old team back, and then you walk 5 feet, and then you realize there's a fire puzzle that you need a different character for because you can't fit a fire person onto your 4-person team. I know that sounded like a lot of work, and it's not. Honestly, it doesn't take that long, but the fact that there are puzzles everywhere and you're constantly switching characters in and out, would it really have been that hard to come up with some sort of system where you can switch one of your 4 party members out with someone else on the fly, like some sort of reserve system where you could say, hey, if I double tap this button or if I push this button again, I'll switch between this character to this character out of combat or something like that. I don't know. It's just something that really bogs down the game for me when I'm forced to solve a bunch of these puzzles and I just have to cycle through a bunch of menus to go get to the character to solve the puzzle, and then the character has a super long cooldown. And another thing is some of the characters can't even solve certain puzzles. Like, for example, I have 5-star, Lightning 5-star, and I actually ran into a puzzle that she can't solve. I think you have to actually bring Lisa to do it because her skill set is actually too slow despite being the correct element. But overall, the puzzles are very fun to do. The world is very fun to explore and the combat system is rewarding. I wouldn't say the game is particularly hard. There's an area that's basically not really an infinite dungeon, but it's a continuous dungeon called the Abyss, and it can actually get pretty difficult at times because it's a timed area, but overall, the game isn't really that difficult in general, which is probably one of my slight gripes about the game. It also has co-op if you want to play with friends, but currently co-op isn't really worth a whole lot, as the people who join actually don't get any loot unless you're doing a boss or a dungeon. If you're walking around the world, they don't get anything but XP, and it also kind of cuts off some of your characters, which is understandable, and it's not a huge deal because it causes you to have to work together with the people who join to solve certain puzzles, but it's just kind of sad to see that only the host really benefits from the co-op sections that are in the game. Also, the game does have a bunch of bosses that spawn daily, and this has been a lot of people's complaints lately. They have a system called resin in which you can basically kill every boss in the game for free. You can spawn them and kill them, but then the flower pops up, and if you don't have enough resin, you can't actually collect the reward from the boss. And resin is something that replenishes daily. So you only can kill maybe 3 or 4 bosses a day, and then you have to go wait for your resin to respawn the next day. On the bright side of this, that means that the dungeon, you don't have to go and fight the same boss like 20 times over and over again forever. But it also makes it so that if you really want to grind something out in a day, you just can't, and it's kind of annoying. And here's probably the part that a lot of people are gonna get on their imaginary moral high ground for, but yes, it is a gacha game, because free games have to make money somehow, even if it's like despicable gacha mechanics. But yeah, the rates for characters are pretty damn low. Granted, if you start out the game now, you basically get like 40, 50 pulls just from going through the main story, so it's not too bad, honestly. And even if you don't pull anyone good, you can basically get through the game with the characters they give you. On top of that, they do give you a lot of characters, like the 4 stars, for free, actually. Right now, if you get to the Abyss level 3, I think, you get Xiangling, I believe how you say her name is, for free. And she's a way better character than Amber, even though I like Amber. Amber is kind of garbage. Sorry, Amber fans. I really like her too. But honestly, this isn't one of those games. It's like, if you pay, you can automatically win the game, because A, it's still gacha, so I don't recommend paying for that. It also has a battle pass system, which is like $10, and it's not really worth it. Like, as much as people like to complain, like, oh, there's a battle pass, oh my god, like, it's not really even that good. It gives you some level up materials, so that way you don't run out, but as long as you're playing the game normally, you don't really run out of level up materials that often. So even though I paid for the battle pass system, and that's all I've paid for this game, I haven't like paid for any pulls or anything like that, I don't really think it's the best option, you know? Now, if we're to talk about the graphics and how the game looks along with the sound design, those things are A+. Like, most of the time, I have a hard time telling that this game is free, that I am allowed to play this game for free. I'm also surprised that it can run on phones, granted at a lower resolution, and it looks arguably a little worse on phones, but it still looks pretty damn good, and the fact that it can even run in the first place is pretty amazing. But on PC, it legit looks better than some Tales games that have come out. Like, I kid you not, I've seen assets in here that make some of the things I've seen in Tales of Berseria look kind of bad, which I hate to say. But there are also some assets in here where you can definitely see they didn't do a lot of texturing on. Like, I've seen certain trees or certain statues that just don't have as much texture as they should. But overall, it's one of those games that if you sat me in a room with someone and said, hey, this game is free, I probably wouldn't believe you. I'd be like, what's the catch, you know? What is the thing here? The soundtrack's wonderful so far. It's definitely very inspired by Breath of the Wild, just the soundtrack alone. The pacing of some of the music, the weird stops they like to do in, just some of the world map themes. It's definitely inspired by it, but honestly, the soundtrack has a charm of its own. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, it has a Breath of the Wild style glider system where you can glide as long as you have stamina, and a Breath of the Wild style climbing system where you can climb literally anything in the game as long as you have the stamina for it, which is part of what makes adventuring in this game a lot of fun, because there's nothing that can stop you, and if there's a place that it looks like you can go there, you can usually go there, unless it's the edge of the map. But yeah, I don't actually have much more to say on Genshin Impact. That was just a random 20-minute ramble of all my thoughts on the game currently. Do I think it's worth playing? Yes, I definitely think it's worth playing, especially since it is absolutely free. You actually can't find it on Steam if you're looking to play it on PC. You actually go to their website. I've enjoyed playing it quite a bit, and I hope anyone who watches this video and decides to give it a shot does too. And I'm having a lot of fun with my friends with it. And it's the main reason I haven't posted a video in like 5 days. Not only because I was just playing it, but also because I wanted to get to a point where I feel like I could accurately talk about the game, even if it's just this completely unscripted ramble that you've gotten today. Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next one. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I don't normally do these types of videos that much, but Genshin Impact is really cool so far, and I've enjoyed it, and it seemed right up my alleys. And if you're either a Tales fan or a Breath of the Wild fan, I recommend giving it a try. Anyways, see you next time. Raiden out.